Hey guys, welcome back to True Space. This is Harith, your medical astrologist, and today we're going to be speaking about the circulatory axis, which is a relationship created through the 5th house of Leo and the 11th house Aquarius. When these energies work together, they create the circulatory axis within our body that allow blood, energy, hormone, oxygen, all to be circulated through our body. So this is very important to learn about if you want to develop a healthy circulation system. And a lot of things I'm going to say in this video may not apply to you, or may apply to you depending on how much Leo energy you have and how much Aquarius energy you have. The more energies or transit or alignment you have towards these houses, these signs, the more you're going to feel their effect and relate to what I'm gonna say. So let's get started. Leo is hot, dry, caloric. Aquarius is hot, wet, sanguine. So when it comes to terms like hot, wet, cold, and dry, all these were terms used back then in medieval Europe, Spain, ancient cultures, and things like that. And in alchemy, astrology, Masonic orders, Jesuits, churches, mosques, temples, and things like that. That's because these terms are utilized with the elements. They deal with alchemy. So if you want to understand how the elements work better, you have to understand what connect these elements and what disconnect these elements. What qualities and condition do they share, and what qualities and condition they do not share. So in this case, we're talking about Leo, the 5th house, and Aquarius, the 11th house. Leo is ruled by fire and Aquarius is ruled by air. Now air and fire, they're similar in alchemy because they share the quality of hotness, but what separates them is that fire is dry and hot while air is hot and wet. This is the same energy that gets played out through people who are dominant with fire energies. People who are dominant with fire energies, they like to take their energy and they like to separate from the rest of society. This is why we like to say that fire deals with imagination, intuition, and visions, but also deal with burning through reality, aka separating yourself from existence. That is because you have your own flame, you have your own vision. While air, even though it share the same quality as fire of hotness, they fire signs and air signs, they both share the quality of liking, wanting to be energetic, wanting to circulate, wanting to move, wanting to be extroverted, express, and things like that. But what separates them is that air is wet. So air signs, they like to take their ability and energy and connect with other people, socialize, network, create through relationship, take that hotness and circulate it around with everybody, compared to fire signs who like to be more lonely, like Aries and things like that. Even though Leo or Sagittarius, even though they are ruled by fire, they're more social than an Aries. That's because an Aries or a first house person is not only ruled by fire, but he's ruled by cardinal fire. So that plays out through Aries as them extreme lone wolf. So you could see how these energies, the elements, they work together, and how they're connected and how they're disconnected. Another example is that how earth and water are connected. Now what connect earth and water is that earth is cold and dry and water is cold and wet. So this makes both earth signs and water signs have lesser energy, wanting to move less, wanting to do less, wanting to be more of a, wanting to be not lazy but more laid back, compared to fire signs and air signs are always expressing. Earth and water signs, they want to lay back and they want to receive from the external world. This is why it gets played out through water signs or water dominated people as them taking from the external world and internalizing, connecting with the emotions, the feelings, but they have to be wet, which that's the quality of connecting with other people, being social, but they utilize it with coldness, being still, and them not expressing it as much. This is why water signs are empathic. They feel people, but earth signs or people who have more earth dominant energy, once they see the external world, the external reality, what they like to do is to take from the external reality, sit with it, and practicalize it, make sense out of it. This is why earth signs are seen more of a not depressed but not too happy and excited like fire signs and air signs. They're more calm, cool, and collected. That's because they're thinking about what makes sense and the practicality of things. So you could see how earth people and water people, they both share the quality of coldness, wanting to be still and not move or express as much compared to fire and earth. But what separates them is that earth sign dominant people, they're dry, so they separate themselves to practicalize, while water cold and wet, so they take that coldness and make it, and they add wetness, which make them want to socialize and connect with other people. So coldness, dryness, wetness, and hotness, those are the alchemical qualities that you should understand before you get into the elements. And when I say terms like caloric, sanguine, phlegmatic, melancholic, these were the terms used back then in medieval Europe to describe fire signs, water signs, and air signs. And for example, they called earth signs back then as melancholic, they called fire signs caloric, and they called air signs sanguine, and they called water signs phlegmatic. That's because everybody back then in ancient history, mystery schools of Egypt or the universities in Spain, they were all studying the same thing. They were studying astrology, necromancy, and the elements and things like that. So you definitely should do your own research on these topics that I'm talking about. So Leo and Aquarius are governed by masculine elements. So masculine elements are fire and air. Fire and air are considered masculine because fire and air dominant people, they like to take these things and externalize them. They like to push them out. People who are fire dominant, they like to take their imagination, intuitions, visions, and express them, show them to people, show people how they visualize things, their imagination. This is why fire signs are looked at sometimes as delusional or unrealistic. That's because fire burns through physical reality. And air dominant people, they like to take their way of thinking, the way they connect, the way they communicate, analyze with other people, and connect on a mental level, but they like to externalize that, so they push out communication, knowledge, wanting to debate, analyzation, and things like that. This is why people like to say air signs like to talk too much, they're too friendly and things like that. But air signs, they know how to move around people, they know how to connect. And we obviously got feminine elements like earth and water. Earth and water, instead of expressing masculine energy, they are ruled by feminine energy, so they like to internalize. Earth and water, they like to internalize. Fire and earth, they like to externalize, push. So Leo and Aquarius are ruled by masculine element, fire and air, which create the concept of externalization, chaos, movement, and circulation. So fire and air together, they create externalization, chaos, movement. This is why in the zodiac wheel, you would see that the fire signs are sextiling the air signs. But also, when it comes to air, earth and water, earth signs are sextiling the water signs. That's because earth and water, they create a formation factor yin. Fire and air, they create a yang chaos factor. A great example of how fire and air works in our body is how the heart externalizes or pushes blood in our body. Because our body is a representation of the universe, and the heart, ruled by a masculine element, it has to externalize or push the blood into our body or around our body. This also kind of leads you into the understanding of what type of health issues Leo dominant people could deal with. The heart over externalizing, over pushing the blood in the body due to whatever reason. The 5th house Leo and the 11th house Aquarius energies can play out as chronic stress and overwork due to their fixated modality, which hyperstimulates the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight mode. So this Aquarius and Leo energy, they don't only deal with masculine elements that require you to externalize them, but also these masculine elements are being fixated. So this is masculine energy being fixated. The issue here is that alone could hyperstimulate the sympathetic nervous system fight or flight mode. Now we got the masculine side of your nervous system, which is your fight or flight mode, and we got the feminine side of your nervous system, your your rest and digest. People have more water and earth dominant, they use the rest and digest aspect of their nervous system more. And people with the fight or flight mode, they utilize that at the masculine side of their nervous system more. But we all as humans, we utilize both of them, but depending on your energetic qualities and levels, fire, earth, wind, and whatnot, you might lean towards one side of your nervous system more than the other. This is where you have to learn about your own body biology and your own mental health to figure out which side to utilize more. Or you could just figure out your natal chart and figure out the percentage of each element, and that's how you figure out which side of your nervous system you utilize more. But also this tells you why people who are more earth and water dominant, they suffer from digestive and build up things in their body. That's because, like we said earlier, water and earth, they deal with internalizing, they deal with the receiving. So it plays that as things getting stuck, things getting stagnated, and this is why they suffer more of digestive issues compared to fire and air, who express these things out, which prevent them from experiencing things that could cause things to build up in their body, because they're always pushing, they're always externalizing. But this is why they suffer from fatigue, chronic stress issues. That's because they're always masculine. So you gotta learn how to be masculine, but also learn how to be feminine. But either way, so this fixated modality, hyperstimulated sympathetic nervous system fight or flight mode, which places a great part on the 5th house Leo, the heart and the circulatory system, and the 11th house Aquarius, the meridian system. So if we take masculine element and start being fixated on these masculine element, we get Leo and Aquarius. But these are the same energy place a great part on our heart, the circulatory system, and the 11th house Aquarius, the meridian system. So we want to be careful of how we utilize energies. And when I talk about energy, always think about it from the mental realm perspective, as the spirit, as the observer. You gotta understand what these elements mean and when do you utilize them. For example, when I started having visions, imagination, this is fire. When I start thinking logically and communicating like I'm doing right now, this is air. When I started practicalizing, looking at things, what makes sense and what does not make sense, this is earth. When people tell me about their feelings, their family, and things like that, and I allow myself to listen, this is me internalizing, this is me using water element. So we as spiritual people, or people who understand alchemy, astrology, and things like that, we gotta be aware of the fact when we use one more element than the other. It's all about spiritual responsibility and the ability to observe what's going on in your mind without getting lost in your mind. Learn how to control your mind. Don't let your mind control your body, since we know the body goes wherever the mind goes. So make sure you know how to make up your mind as the observer, as the spirit first, so you could take care of your mind, which automatically takes care of your body. Now, Leo, the 5th house, from an astronomical perspective, is the fixated portion of the summer season and rules the beginning of the circulatory axis right now. So every time you start thinking about the seasons and how they split to 12 houses or 12 zodiacs, what I want you to do, start to learn and start put yourself in a situation where you see how the external world is a reflection of the internal world. So when we experience the summer season in the external world, people like to dance, people like to sing, go on the beach, they want to play games, they want to be entertained, they want to be on the stage. This is what the summer season does to us in the physical world. That's because everything is getting warm. This is the hottest point of the period and a period of time and things like that. But biologically, it plays out as the beginning of the circulatory axis. So Leo, the 5th house, being the beginning of the circulatory axis, tells us the beginning of where heat is generated, or where the summer is exalted in our body. One of the most important organs when it comes to creating heat within our body is our heart, the circulatory system. This is why it has to be always working. And the moment your heart stops working properly, this is when your body starts getting cold. This is when you start going towards death, winter, versus summer, which is life. But either way, so interesting, the 4th house Cancer and the 5th house Leo and the 6th house Virgo, together they create your internal summer season, which I was trying to explain to you earlier. Leo, the 5th house, is the middle portion of the summer season. Cancer, the 4th house, is the beginning of the summer season, and Virgo, the 6th house, is the ending of the summer season, which biologically correspond to your most vital organs that stay in this area right here. We got Cancer, the 4th house, your lymphatic immune system. We got Leo, the 5th house, your heart and circulatory system. We got the 6th house Virgo, the digestive system. And we know in this area, your most vital organs stay here. This is why it's important for your body to keep these organs warm and keep them functioning healthy and protect them from cold weather. This is why when your body gets cold, all your blood from the external extremities, it goes to your internal organs, your vital organs, your internal summer season. The same way how you experience summer season externally, but you have your internal summer season. So if you understand Cancer, the 4th house, 5th house Leo, and the 6th house Virgo create your summer season, this tells you the rest of your body is a representation of also the seasons, but also the 12 houses. But you have to understand how they correspond together. So if you begin at your head, we got Aries, the 1st house. This is your brain and nervous system. We got Taurus, the 2nd house, the hormonal system. And we got the and then we got the 3rd house Gemini, the respiratory system. Together, these organs, they create your spring season. And what does the spring does? The spring brings birth. It brings new stuff into existence. It's the beginning of life. What does these organs do? They maintain the process of life. They begin things. Your brain sends nervous signals to the rest of the body for you to do stuff. Your hormonal system makes the body stable, sends hormonal messengers to maintain stability and for certain biological process to happen. The Gemini, the 3rd house, the end of the spring season, allows you to breathe in oxygen. So all these create your spring season. Below that, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, we got your summer season, which is your vital organs, and below that we have your below the horizon, which will be the fall, the beginning of the fall season. Now what is the fall season? It's a Libra, the 7th house, which is the kidneys or the excretory system, which allow us to release, let go. Think about the fall season on the external level. The fall season allow things to fall, to die. The trees start to die and things like that. But it plays out biologically to the 7th house in you is your kidneys, which allow you to get rid of waste, urinate, and things like that. Then after that, what do we have after Libra, the 7th house? We have Scorpio, the reproductive organs. These are the reproductive organs allow you to utilize the washroom, but also allow you to reproduce children. But also the 8th house deals with purification and other things. And then the end of the fall season, it's ruled by Sagittarius, the 9th house, which is the muscular season. And that is important because Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, which is the component that controls inflammation and alkalinity within your body. So it deals with the fall season within you. And after the fall seasons, we get into the knees. Now what rules the knees? Capricorn, the 10th house. But Capricorn, the 10th house, does not only rule the knees, it rules the skeleton system, including the knees. Then we got Aquarius, the 11th house, which is your chins and the meridian system. Then after that, we got the 12th house Pisces, which a lot of people like to describe as the feet, but it's also the integumentary system. It's your skin. So you could see how I'm describing it and how all the 4 seasons exist within you and how they get divided into 12 body parts. It's because your body is the reflection of the universe. But through understanding how your body is the reflection of the universe, understanding how this part of your body is the spring season, understanding this is the summer season, and below that is the fall season, after that is the winter season, allow you to understand why these body systems and organs that create the winter season of your body get the least amount of blood, and the blood represents the sun. This is why they get the least amount of blood, heat, summer. This is why your toes and the epidermis of the skin and your bones, they get the least amount of the blood, or they get the blood in very specific ways. Like your bones does not have access to the circulatory system, but they have specific I believe veins or capillaries that allow blood come to the bones. That's because your bone is a representation of the winter season. This is why they're hard, they're not soft. So right now we're going to be speaking about the fifth house of Leo, and what makes up the energetic force of the fifth house Leo. The fifth house Leo is a caloric sign. Like I said earlier, fire signs are caloric, water signs are phlegmatic, and earth signs are melancholic, and water signs are phlegmatic, and air signs are sanguine. So Leo, the fifth house, it's a fire house, fire sign, so it's caloric. That corresponds to the yellow bile bilirubin, which helps in the digestion of fat, and fire energy in general, increase your metabolic rate. This is why fire signs, it seems like they're more muscular, or it's easier for them to lose weight. That's because due to the fire element that is responsible for the metabolic rate of how fast your body digests food, breaks down stuff, chemical reactions, and things like that. It tends to play out through fire signs as them having the ability to lose weight quicker, burn through, gain muscles, and things like that. Okay, so the ruling planet, the sun, is hot and dry, just like the house, just like the fifth house Leo is hot and dry. This is important to understand the house, what type of nature the house has, and what type of nature does a planet has. That's because some of the houses and the planets don't share the same nature, which could cause different issues. So for example, the 8th house Scorpio is cold and wet, it's phlegmatic, but the issue here, it's ruled by Mars. Mars is a hot and dry planet. This tells you when Scorpios, they get too lost in that fixed emotional water, and they don't know how to let go. Mars, the planet, is there, which has the quality of hotness and dryness to allow them to evaporate all that emotional water, to be more serious, to be more passionate. This is why Scorpio, it plays out as them being very intense, being very secretive, and things like that. This is why they manifest sometimes chaotic situations in their life, because they stay in that fixed emotional water and they don't know, they can't get out of it. This is why they need Mars, to help them transform all this water. And this is why someone like an Aries, who's also ruled by Mars, but he expresses Mars, help them melt all that ice and emotional water that they are stuck in. But in this case, Leo, the fifth house, is hot and dry, like just like the planet, the sun, which is hot and dry. And this corresponds to inflammation, overexertion, which can lead to heart trouble and poor circulation, hardening of the arteries, strokes, panic attacks, disorders of the red and white blood cells. That's because they semi-sextile Cancer, the fourth house. Anything wrong with the circulatory system is something related to the lymphatic and immune system, which is correlated to Cancer, the fourth house. That's because the lymphatic immune system is responsible for cleaning out your body and taking care of the circulatory system, and it's the same system that attacks pathogen and things like that. So if you have any heart circulatory blood issue, it's related to Cancer, the fourth house, but they are connected through their relationship with Leo and Cancer, since they semi-sextile each other, and together they create the summer season. This is why it's important to know astrology and know how these things work together. The squares, the triangles, teaches you how the human body works together. They also deal with Leos. They also deal with high and low blood pressure problem. That's because they sextile Libra, which is the kidneys, and the kidneys and the heart issues are synonymous together. That's because they work together to help the body. While the heart is responsible for pumping blood, oxygenated blood, which helps the kidney to get the oxygenated blood that it needs to do its function. The kidneys help the heart and the circulatory system by allowing them to release waste, get rid of toxins, and balancing your blood pressure. They control the mineral compositions of your fluid and things like that. So it's an important relationship. By understanding the relationship between each house, we understand which area of the body affect another area. The Leos also deal with mid back and spine, T3 and T4 problems. So the spinal disc that's right behind the Leo area, where the fifth house is, Leos tends to manifest problem with these areas. That's because I believe when you don't see people expressing their Leo energy, where their chest could be, they could stick their chest out, be confident, as opposed to being hunched over, being scared, being too passive, not wanting to express your desire, not wanting to show you people your ego. But just think about how Leo is the lion. So the heart, you could think about the heart as the lion that rule the jungle. So everybody gotta listen to Leo, because if Leo does not do its part, the rest of the body is gonna start to die. So they definitely suffer from sort of mid, back, and spine problem. That's when someone start losing that Leo energy, that confidence inside them. The sun is the main ruler of Leo. The sun, the ruler of Leo, the fifth house, the circulatory system, correspond to the component of the blood and erythrocyte, your red blood cells, which is responsible for delivering oxygen, nutrients, hormones, and cells, and taking away waste. So the sun represents the blood or the red blood cells within your body, and Leo, the fifth house, is the circulatory system. So the sun is the blood flowing through the circulatory system, Leo, the fifth house. So you could see how it plays out both in the external world, the same way in the internal world. How your blood moves within your body, saying your body is your own universe, and your blood acts as the sun that brings warmth and brings many good things to the rest of the bodies. The same way the sun travels in the external world and brings heat. So the sun is debilitating in Leo. The Saturn is debilitating in Leo. Saturn is 180 degrees away from the 11th house Aquarius, the meridian system, which means you can experience the negative side of Saturn, cold and dry, which create constriction, rigidity, and lack of flexibility and growth in the fifth house Leo, the heart and circulatory system, creating heart and circulation problem. So Saturn is debilitating in Leo. So people express a lot of Leo like energies. If they go too far in that realm, they're gonna start experience the debilitation of Saturn. Saturn is gonna start to send its negative side towards Leo. This is where the heart, the circulatory system, gets restricted, becomes rigid. It's not flexible as it's used to. And if you know anything about heart and circulatory problems, you would know that majority of heart and circulatory problems are something related to veins and the capillaries not being flexible to allow blood to be transported, because all Leo problem is restrictions and things building up, toxins and things building up in their blood. Also, this explains the connection between osteoarthritis and heart diseases, and they're getting affected by the condition of Saturn. So the connection between osteoarthritis, which is inflammation of the bones, and heart diseases is that both of them are getting affected by the condition of Saturn. So the heart disease comes from Saturn being debilitated, which causes Saturn to cause restriction in the fifth house Leo. But where's osteoarthritis coming from? That's because Leo, the fifth house, in conjunct or king conks the Capricorn, the 10th house. So a lot of problems that Leos deal with is problem Cancers deal with, since Cancer is the sign right next into that is opposing Capricorn, the 10th house. So osteoarthritis in Leo is going to come from the in conjunction with Capricorn, the 10th house, and the fact that they opposing Aquarius, the 11th house, which is ruled by Saturn, the planet of restriction. This is why osteoarthritis and heart diseases are synonymous together. It's just a restriction, things getting hard, things getting cold. Uranus is debilitating in Leo. Uranus is 180 degrees away from home, Aquarius, the 11th house, the meridian system, which biologically correspond to weakness in the Leo, the 5th house, the circulatory system, through the negative side of Uranus, which will create lack of circulation, stress, and one-way energy overload. Furthermore, this weakness can affect the astrocyte's ability to rig in blood regulation. So Uranus being debilitated in Leo tells us what could happen if you go too far when it comes to Leo energies. You could experience the negative side of Uranus, which is lack of circulation and stress and one-way energy overload, and that could be sudden, like a heart attack or something like that. That's because Uranus, when you think of Uranus, think of electricity, and you have to understand that there's an electrical stimulus that is generated by the sinus node in the heart, because the sinus node, the electricity, controls the rhythm of the heart breathing. So when the electrical stimulus gets messed up or gets in some way, shape or form is not working properly, the heart is you're gonna experience heart attacks, heart problems and things like that. Michael Jackson had Uranus in Leo, and he actually experienced a few, I think, strokes and heart attacks, which actually let me know that Michael Jackson did not experience a heart attack because he had a bad diet or something like that. He had a heart attack or strokes because he overworked his heart and circulatory system. It's because Michael Jackson loved to be on the stage, he loved to perform and all the stuff. Coincidentally, his Uranus is in Leo, so this is why Michael Jackson brought this energy of being unique, a new individual, like an alien with that, because he has Uranus and Leo. So he took that uniqueness and put it on the stage for everybody to see. But that's the same energy that make Michael Jackson perform so much to the point he overexert himself to experience a heart attack. So you could say that Michael Jackson destroyed his own body through how much he enjoyed performing, which is kind of crazy to think about it that way, since this tells you the importance of having people around you that could keep you aware of your own behavior, because sometimes we as humans, we're not aware of our certain health patterns or certain mental patterns that are not healthy, that could cause destruction in the long term. So we need people surrounding each other to prevent each other from going too far in one energy. This is why the zodiac wheel is set up as a circle, because all these houses that are opposing each other, they make sure everybody stay on track by opposing each other, because if they don't oppose each other, these people can go too far in either energy. But either way, Neptune is exalted in Leo. Neptune is 90 degrees away from its home co-ruler, which means exalted or rising. This biologically corresponds to Leo, the 5th house, the circulatory system, being in the process of recovery over exhausting itself through the Neptune conditions, through the Neptune condition of the surface of tissues, organs, which is why the 12th house Pisces, the intermediary system, works closely with the 5th house Leo, the circulatory system. So this is how Neptune or Pisces, the 12th house, work with the 5th house of Leo. They work together through the relationship of the capillaries. The capillaries near the surface of the skin open up when your body needs to cool off, or close down when your body needs to conserve heat. So basically, Neptune, cold and wet nature, help Leo fixate on hot, dry nature to cool off. So when we have all this heat, this fire being fixated right here, and we want to express it, sometimes we allow too much heat to build up in our body, and we don't know how to externalize it, how to push it. So we need Neptune, Pisces, the 12th house, to help us sometimes externalize or allow our body to release heat from our skin to maintain our body temperature. I believe they call this thermoregulation. This is where you have to understand body temperature disorder to maintain the temperature between your body and the external world. And this is also how you maintain your own health, since you naturally know if you become too cold, you become too sick, and if you become too hot, that's when you become too sick. So you're gonna have to jump on the opposite energy to balance things out. I should actually mention this earlier. The fixated energies of the season help us fixate or hold on to the cardinal energies that start the seasons from an astrological esoteric perspective, but from an astronomical exoteric perspective. So by this I mean this: from an astronomical exoteric perspective, we see how the spring seasons begin with Aries, the 1st house, then the mid portion is Taurus, the 2nd house, then the ending is Gemini, the 3rd house. But what's the spring season is trying to teach us? It's trying to teach us how to give birth to something new. So how do you give birth to something new? You need to start with the elements. You need to start with cardinal fire, which is Aries. You have to give birth to a new imagination, visions. Then you want to use towards the second house, which is fixated earth. So you want to take the cardinal fire you gave birth to, utilize fixed earth, and then use the third portion of the spring season, the ending, which is what? Gemini, the mutable air. So give birth to a new thought with your imagination, then be fixated on it practically, earth, then be ready to mutate it and be adaptable with what you give birth to, utilizing the air element by listening to other people's thoughts, other people's ideas to improve on what you're doing. So by us watching the seasons or how the universe work, we learn about how our mind works and how our body works. The fixated energies of the season biologically provide us with a high vitality and resistance to diseases. That's common sense, because just think about the concept of fixed energy. That's something fixated, that's something stuck. So obviously people who have fixed energy will have higher vitality and have higher resistance to things. That's because they're fixed, they can fight against it. But there's also a negative side to it. On the other hand, being too fixated can lead to negative experiences of crystallization, blockages, stiffness, stagnation, and excessive retention. So like I was saying earlier, you gotta learn how to play with these elements and these different modalities. You gotta learn when to use cardinal fire, learn when to use fixed fire, learn when to use cardinal earth, learn when to use mutable air, learn when to use mutable water, learn when to use fixed earth, and things like that. You gotta be an alchemist. But for you to be an alchemist, a real astrologist, to be like the universe but play out God in a mini form, you have to learn how these things work, how reality works. The 11th house Aquarius, the meridians. In Chinese medicines can be seen as energetic channel that connect the 12 organs and regulate the flow of important substance, blood, hormones, and qi. But it needs to be emphasized that the meridians are non-physical, which is why you need acupuncture model to locate the specific points of the meridians. Also, the 11th house Aquarius, the meridians represent astrocytes, the most numerous cell type within our central nervous system. This is why the central nervous system represents Aries, the first house, which sextile the 11th house Aquarius. Remember what we said earlier, fire signs sextile air signs, they create a yang externalization chaos factor masculine, and earth and water sextile each other to create a yin feminine formation factor. So in this case, 11th house Aquarius sextile the first house Aries, which explains why we have the astrocytes are the most numerous cell type within our central nervous system. Astrocytes perform a variety of tasks, the power of association. So the same way how Aquarius energy play out as them wanting to connect with people, wanting to associate themselves with different people, network, and things like that, it plays out through the organs the same way. So the organs here, astrocytes, play the same role that Aquarius energy play. Astrocytes act as the middleman between the circulatory system, the blood, and the neurons, because they act as the middleman that allow certain things to happen and certain things not to happen. So Aquarius utilize the energy of being a middleman, aka association, to connect two body parts together, which would be the circulatory system, Leo, and Aries, the first house, which would be the central nervous system. But through the astrocytes provide nutrients to neurons by shuttling them from the blood vessels. They call this the blood-brain barrier. This is because obviously neurons, cardinal fire, Aries, the first house, we continuously in our mind give birth to new visions and imagination, and we need energy, we need glucose, we need sugar to continue to do that. But astrocytes is the organ that allows us to do that, creating what you guys want to call the blood-brain barrier. They also deal with recycling neurotransmitters. So when we use too much of one neurotransmitter like dopamine, they recycle that. They know how to balance things out in our body. They deal with getting rid of waste out of our neurons. That's because you got to think about what gets rid of waste in your brain and nervous system. It's your astrocyte. If we don't have them, we're going to allow a lot of waste to build up in our brain and nervous system. They're involved in the repair and scarring of in the head injury. So astrocytes play a very important role. I also should mention this. I was watching a video about one lady came up with the conclusion that astrocytes are one of the main important factors when it comes to intelligence. That's because astrocytes act as a middleman between neurons. They allow neurons to connect together. So if we view intelligence as the science of knowing how to connect this idea with this idea and make it make sense, we could come up with the conclusion that astrocytes, or knowing how to deal with our own astrocyte, would teach us how to become better thinkers, because astrocytes act as the middleman between neurons and other neurons. The 11th house Aquarius rules the mid portion of the winter season, the end of the circulatory axis. The 11th house Aquarius have the quality of being hot and wet, and is ruled by Saturn, cold and dry, and it's also co-ruled by Uranus, hot and dryness. So you're gonna see all those qualities and these conditions come up when it comes to understanding Aquarius energy issues and things like that. The coldness and dryness coming from Saturn, and the hotness and dryness coming from Uranus. So Aquarius, the 11th house, deals with the concept of Uranus, electricity and being spasmodic. So whenever you get this electrical feeling within your body, you could think about Uranus and Aquarius energy. So this makes them deal with circulation problem, nerve related problems, nervousness, ADHD, seizures, epilepsy, sudden illnesses, problem with energy flows, chin and calves and Achilles injuries. That's because Aquarius rules this area, and since Aquarius like to move around and connect and associate with other people, they might get into a few injuries when it comes to these areas of the lower extremities. But a lot of their problem of nervousness, ADHD, sudden illnesses comes from the energetic flow of the meridian system within our body. That's because Aquarius energy, from a psychological point of view, it deals with being fixated on air, so being fixated on the way you think and analyze and the way you communicate. But the issue here is that Uranus is involved. Uranus is going to make you have a lot of abstract thoughts, a lot of big thought, revolutionary thought, inventive thought. This is why people see or associate Aquarius with uniqueness and things like that. But it plays out biologically as nervousness, issue, problem with focusing. You get distracted easily, like highly nervous issues. This is why it's important, and thank God this is why the Aquarius, the 11th house, is actually air. It's ruled by an air element, which allow them to externalize all this Uranus energy. If they allow that Uranus energy to build up too much in their body, it's gonna make them go crazy. They're gonna have a lot of problems, so they need to externalize it. They need to pull all that electricity, Uranus, out of them, or that Uranus energy is gonna be the same energy that destroyed them. This is why people with a lot of Uranus energy or Aquarius energy, they need to learn when to chill out and when to stop thinking. That's because they take the thinking realm or the abstract realm and they think about it too much and they utilize it too much. Saturn, the ruler of Aquarius, Saturn represents the condition, structure, strength, and form on the positive side. But on the negative side, it represents rigidity, stiffness, and lack of flexibility and growth being played out through the meridian system. So Saturn, being the ruler here, show us the importance of structure, form to regulate the flow of chi, which is why people use acupuncture to stimulate the central nervous system to create biochemical changes. And this is important to know because, as we read earlier, that the meridians are non-physical but they're energetic channels. So the best way to deal with this energetic channel is to their main ruler, Saturn. By affecting their structure, we create biochemical changes. This is why people do yoga, stretches, massages, cupping therapy. That's because they want to affect that meridian system, that channel that energy goes through. Uranus is co-ruled by Aquarius. Uranus represents the condition of circulation, electrical flow versus lack of circulation, stress, and one-way energy overload. Our cells are specialized in generating electricity, so our bodies are electrical. Specialized in generating electrical currents with elements like sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. Electricity is required for the first house Aries, the brain and nervous system, to send signals throughout your body and to the brain to make it possible for us to move, to feel, and think. So Uranus is dealing with everything, dealing with electricity within our body. Our cells generate electrical currents. We need sodium, potassium, calcium to produce electricity. Your brain and nervous system requires calcium to produce electricity. Your brain and nervous system, Aries the first house, create carnal fire, which play out biologically as nervous system signals, which goes back to what I said earlier, why the 11th house Aquarius sextile the first house Aries, the brain and nervous system, because they have to work together. The sun is debilitated in Aquarius. When the sun is 180 degrees away from its home, Leo the 5th house, the circulatory system, this planetary position is considered as debilitation for the sun, which correspond to Aquarius the 11th house, the meridian, having a weak blood flow, red bile, circulation issues, specifically the blood-brain barrier, which supply the nutrients to the neurons and also allow to get rid of waste and many things. So the sun is debilitated in Aquarius. This tells us if we go too far in that Aquarius energies, which deal with being fixated in that air, thinking, analyzing realm, we're gonna experience blood flow problem. Our blood's gonna stop circulating, and that's when we really experience problems. This is what a lot of Aquarius need to learn not to do. Aquarius need to learn how not to think too much and not to be, because Aquarius are like stuck up mentally. They like to be in their realm of thinking. This is the same realm area in their mind that causes them to have a lot of nervous related problems. So they need to learn how to be grounded physically. They don't have to do as much thinking. They need to learn how to bring themselves back to earth and move their physical body so their blood and could continue circulating, or they're gonna experience the opposition coming from the 11th house Aquarius to Leo. Is gonna affect their heart and circulatory system. When our body experiences stress using masculine elements, it releases stress hormones such as cortisol, epinephrine, which is why Taurus the 2nd house square both Leo the 5th house and Aquarius the 11th house. So the more we use Leo energy, the 5th house, be fixated on our imagination and visions and the way we see and feel about these things, or Aquarius being fixated on the way we think and the way we communicate and analyze things, we're gonna release a lot of stress hormones in our body, because like I said earlier, you gotta learn how to use masculine energies and feminine energies. When you overutilize these masculine energies of 5th house Leo and the 11th house Aquarius, you're gonna cause the Taurus the 2nd house, the hormonal system, to respond. Since the hormonal system, Taurus the 2nd house, deal with the earth element, it deals with practicality, it deals with what makes sense, while Aquarius and Leo, they deal with being masculine and expression. So the more you jump on Leo or Aquarius energy, the more stress you put on your 2nd house Taurus, the hormonal system. But this also explains to you the importance of the hormonal system when it comes to having a healthy circulation, or a healthy circulation anymore. That's because there's something going on with the hormonal system. Your hormonal system is releasing stress hormone. This is why Taurus the 2nd house squares Leo the 5th house and Aquarius the 11th house. But also interesting, the 8th house Scorpio square both the 5th house Leo and the 11th house Aquarius, which tells us the importance of getting rid of toxins, waste buildup, and the importance of purification psychologically and physiologically can affect how our blood and the electrical energy in our body circulate through the circulatory axis. So if we allow a lot of things to build up in our 8th house Scorpio, if we allow a lot of waste, toxins, emotions, drug problems to build up in our body, what's gonna happen is that we're gonna experience the square energy between Scorpio, the 8th house, and 11th house Aquarius, and the 5th house Leo. We're gonna experience problems with circulation, because that circulation, for things to flow smoothly throughout your body, you gotta have the least amount of waste. Your body gotta be pure. Your body can't have a lot of toxins build up. When you see problems related to toxins build up, that automatically leads into problem with circulation. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you for coming, and if you would like to check any of our services, please check our website or Instagram page and the link down below. Thank you.